welcome all to DrupalCon Singapore. So this session is about enhancing Drupal with PHP 8, new functionalities, and exploring the compatibility. So these are the QR code, or if you want to follow along the slides. I will display this just in a couple of slides again because I will be showing a lot of code in the screenshots, and there will be useful links. So if you need to follow along, this is the link. About me, I work as a senior developer at Tag1. I mostly do PHP backend work, and hence the session. I am a trainer and mentor at various Drupal events across India, sometimes even in DrupalCons. I am one of the core organizers of the local Pune Drupal group. This is my user name in Drupal.org. We are Tag1 work with different enterprise clients. We are number 2 all-time contributors of Drupal with the highest concentration of core committers across any company. We are also an enterprise partner of the DA and contribute a full-time infrastructure person that helps with different sites of Drupal.org so that the community can focus on contributing and building Drupal. And we are also hiring, so if you are looking for something, get in touch. We work with different organizations, enterprise, government, non-government, non-profits, different clients across different verticals. The session slides again. So this is taken from PHP.NET, the first page itself. What can PHP do? And the answer is anything, period. It took my attention. Basically, and to be fair, they go on to say that PHP is mostly used to generate dynamic content and websites using it. But this really caught my attention. So I have divided this session into a couple of parts. The first part would talk about release cycles and of PHP, how it affects release cycles of Drupal. And then at part 2, we go into different PHP 8 features that are added. OK, so into part 1. But before that, a little bit of history. PHP was started at 1994. It was a personal project. It even used to be called as personal homepage, which is PHP. But now it's called PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. I will not go into all of this. I just want to get your attention to the slide which I have highlighted. 2015 was when Drupal's PHP 7 was released. And as you can see, it took the community 4 years. In 2019 is when Drupal 8 started requiring PHP 7. So it took 4 years. And requiring is enforcing PHP 7. The support for PHP 7 was still there. So it was still supporting PHP 5.6. And as you can see, there's no PHP 6 because that sort of was a failed project. So this will give you an idea of how different PHP releases have been supported. So as you can see on the last PHP 8, which was released like 18 days ago, it gets support until 4 years. So there's active support, then it moves on to security support. But each release of PHP gets supported for 4 years. And in a calendar view, you can see that on the left-hand side, PHP 7.3, 7.4, and 8 are not supported anymore, so which means they do not even get security updates. And today, which is 9th of December, because PHP 8.4 was released pretty recently, it goes on till the next 4 years. Some Drupal release milestones. And again, I will not go into all of this. Just Drupal 10.1 required Drupal 8, PHP 8.1. And Drupal 11 will require PHP 8.3. So these are the supported PHP versions. So the previous slide was about required PHP versions, and these are the supported PHP versions. And as you can see, Drupal 10.4, it does support all of the versions of PHP 8. So PHP 8, which is still in PHP 8.1, which is in the maintenance window, is still supported by Drupal. It drops support after PHP Drupal 10.4. So Drupal 11 will stop supporting PHP 8.1 and 8.2. So how is the PHP version determined in projects? So it is determined with the composer.json file, and the first way in which you can provide PHP version is with the config key inside the composer. So this is the piece of composer.json from Drupal core. As you can see, the platform key, the PHP version is 8.1.0. So what it does is it basically does a simulation. So as an example, let's say your hosting provider is on PHP 8.2. If you provide this as a platform, the composer then assumes that it has to resolve the dependencies for PHP 8.1, even if your platform is actually at a different level. So this basically helps manage dependencies for composer. So this is a simulation part. The second part where you can provide the PHP version is with the require key. Inside the require key, it basically enforces the PHP version. So in this case, the PHP or composer will not even download a package if it is not supported by version greater than 8.0. That is from the meta tag module. Okay, that was a quick recap of the support process and things. The second part is about features. At any point, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Or if I am going a little fast, please let me know. Okay, so the first feature that I would like to talk about, which was introduced in PHP 8, is just-in-time compiler. It basically is for faster execution of code. So PHP is an interpreted language. So what do you mean by that? Can anyone just, what is an interpreted language? Anyone?
A language that is translated into machine code at runtime and not pre-compiled.
Exactly. So a normal programming language, what it does is there are two steps. One is compiling the code. So a code gets compiled into a machine level format, which the programming language compiler does, and then there is a runtime. It basically runs this compiled code again. And in PHP, all of this happens every time. So every time a PHP application is run, the machine code or the PHP code, it's get compiled into a machine code, and then the PHP version machine or PHP VM or the Zend VM runs it. And it happens on every request. And it is an expensive process. But to solve that, PHP 5.6, if I'm not wrong, introduced opcache. Opcache is what it does is once a code is compiled into machine code, it stores into a cache. So next time the same piece of code is running, the conversion of PHP code into machine code does not happen. It gets directly from the opcache. And just-in-time compiler, it takes it a step further. So basically, you can see that the typical PHP code, it runs in a Zend VM, but the just-in-time compiler, what it does is it converts the code again in a different format. It's not a format that generally is created with opcache. It's not opcode. It's a dynamic assembly code that generates, and it is not run in a Zend virtual machine as a regular code, but it is run in the operating system CPU itself. It has been found that it increases the performance of arithmetic calculations or logical calculations a lot, but that's not what a normal PHP application is like. So for example, Drupal does not do a lot of arithmetic calculations, same as WordPress. There might be site that does that, but not generally. So there's a little minute impact on performance, not a significant impact of just-in-time compiler. One advantage of this is because the code runs on CPU, you can write more functions in PHP now. Because PHP is written in C, you can have more code that you want to run on CPU. Okay, so the next feature that I want to talk about is constructor property promotion. For this, I will consider a scenario of book publishing. A book, basically in real world, might have attributes like what is the title of the book, who wrote that book, like the author, and when was it published. We will just take these three for now. A typical representation of this in PHP in terms of object-oriented programming could be like this. A class book, some private attributes like title, author, publication year, constructor to basically initiate it. There might be other class methods, but initiating it would be using new keyword and then passing the relevant arguments. So this, with constructor property promotions, what it does is it reduces the need of boilerplate code. And what I mean by that is you provide the scope of the variable, which is the private, directly to the constructor, and it gets promoted to the class level. So it is same like this, but with less code. So you provide the scope resolution directly inside of the constructor, and the initiation and the rest of the code works as it is. In Core, I was able to find this example in 10.3 in the field category type manager. So basically, this class is responsible for whenever you try to add a new field, you go to manage fields on any entity type. Let's say a node content type, you go to manage fields and click on add field. You see a list of categories now. What type of field. So this is managed by this. So you can see the first parameter passed to the constructor is root, and then there's protected. There's a read-only string, a read-only part, type of the variable, and the name of the variable. So the root variable here gets promoted to the class level. And this is an interesting example because not all variables or not all arguments passed are promoted. You can see the second argument, which is the module handler, still uses the older version, like this keyword and then module handler. Okay, so the next is strict type hinting, so enforcing the precision at all level. So without strict type hinting, you can initiate a book with any argument, right? So we don't know what type of argument title is if you only write private. Same as author and publication year, you can provide it with any type of values. But with strict type hinting, this is syntactically correct but logically wrong. But with strict type hinting, you can provide the type of the variables directly. And this is with, again, constructor property promotion. So title and author are string, and publication year becomes integer. In Core, this is, I found it in the Ajax framework, add JS commands. You can see scripts and string, they have the types, variable types provided. Next is union types, multiple types of single parameter. So if you provide this, so let's say the publication year is not known. You cannot provide a false value. So to deal with this, what you can do is provide different types of variables. So now publication year, as you can see, is an integer or a string. So it accepts both integer or a string. And same as, let's say there is an example getter. In the return type, you can say, after get publication year, it could return either a integer or a string. Then example usage could be the same, but book 2 you can see that there is the publication year is unknown. So because it now also accepts strings. In core, I was able to find it in the Ajax framework again. You can see that the first parameter could be of 3 types. It could be a string, it could be an instance of stringable object which implements this interface, or it could be a null value. Next is named arguments. Here you can see that it's again the same example, but it's the way in which you create the objects. Basically, now you can give a name of the argument and then provide them the value. So you can see there is the title, author, and publication year. Without the $sign, they are passed. And it does not matter if they are provided in any sequence. Otherwise, with PHP, you need to provide them in sequence of how the function is declared. Attributes. So who here remembers how to define a block plugin? How do you do that? Like anyone?
Create a class file in the plugins directory and then create annotations, basically.
So basically, you create a special file. It goes inside your module's SRC folder. Then there is a plugin folder. Then there is a block folder. And then you name a block. And then basically, it you add a special PHP comment, which is called as annotation, and then you define the metadata like the block ID, the translation, the admin label, and things like that. Attributes is an option to that. So basically, going through and changing it in a PHP way. The PHP doc block was parsed by Doctrine. It is, again, an external library. Now PHP has this native support of attributes. You can see that now you can create attributes for a variable. You can create attributes for a function. You can create attributes for a class. So variable attributes is something. So basically, if you want to make a field which is required, so you can create an attribute. Attributes is a special PHP class, and basically give a message that this field is required if they do not provide it. Same as with length. And then our book class becomes the title field is mandatory, the author field is mandatory, and the max length should be 4. Maybe the max length could be a little more flexible because it is also a string, and string could be a little bigger. There is a way in attribute to do that as well. But for the sake of simplicity, let's consider max length as an integer attribute. Yeah, as I said, again, taking the example of block, this is how block plugin used to be declared. So there is this special @block, which is an annotation. You provide the ID, you provide the admin label, you provide if it has a settings form, basically. Some blocks do have configuration options, configure block. You provide it with the use of attributes. With attributes, there is just a special block attribute. So it's much cleaner. And as you can see, it has the same details, like the ID, admin label, and false. But now, instead of it being written in PHP, it is in comments, it is written plain in PHP. So it has all the validations. It can use different classes, for example. You can see admin label is now a translatable markup. So just to make that work, there was a translation, @translation here as well. But to parse that, it was a memory intensive process. And you can see that there is an array, like there are different PHP benefits that you get from this. And the other implementation that remains the same. There are several plugins that are ready with attributes, like the action plugin. Action plugins is ready. There is field type, there is field widget, there is field display, or field formatter. All of that can be provided using attributes. Drush commands can be written by attributes. So there is a lot of areas where attributes is being used. And the Drupal 11 will most likely have very few PHP doc annotations. Mostly core is moving towards attributes. So next we talk about is enums. So basically it provides a way in which you can possibly limit the type of variables that get passed to a function. So for example, if we have status, right? So status of a book is a fourth attribute. Let's say if we introduce that, and the status could be it is available, it is checked out, it is reserved. So one of these, right? So we'll have to add inside of the constructor to check for these values. And let's say if there is one more status that gets added, you need to make change here and any other place. Actually, just changing it here would be okay because the constructor is the first function that gets called. But this is not really ideal, and enum solves it. And in case if this is not handled in PHP, it would just mean that it could receive any string as an attribute. It would just receive strings, but any string as an attribute, and the system would not be able to handle most of the cases. So that's where we could take help of enums. So enum is a special type, like a class. You can write it in its own namespace. It works on any namespace if it is written properly. You can provide, the syntax is here, you can provide the different cases and the values of it, available, checked out, and reserved. Then you can see the fourth type of parameter, it changed from string to book status. So book status is a new type of new type of enum or a variable type you can see for status. Now what will happen whenever you initiate or try to initiate a book with value which is not present in these, the PHP compiler would throw a fatal error, and it would not return, or it will not receive strings now because the variable type is different. So in order to initiate it, this is how you can initiate it. So new book, it's again the named arguments, title, author, publication, year, status. The status is the book is available. So that's enums. So the benefit of this is it gives you ability to limit the amount of features or limit the amount of parameters a function could receive. And this is an example of a string enum. There is another, there's a question?
Yep.
Yeah.
So is there a way to provide a default value, let's say if some status was not provided?
Yes. So default value could be provided in the parameter itself, in the constructor definition itself. So the question was, can we provide a default value if the value is not provided? So you can say public book in the constructor, public book status equal to, and then available could be a default value. Book status : the scope resolution operator, and available. If you this is directly called, but if you want to call it from the values itself, like the small case available, You can call it using a function book status, then scope resolution operator, and from property or something, and then small case available as a string. Who here is familiar with this? Okay, so this is basically a constant written in a file system interface. So whenever you upload a file, let's say to a field or in a custom form, you need to specify what needs to happen. By default, the value is rename. So whenever you upload a file, say test.png to an image field, it gets saved in the files folder. But the second time you upload the same file, there's test_0.png, and so on. That's the default value. So basically, constants were used previously to limit the amount of values present. So this is an example of rename, and as you can see, this has been deprecated in Drupal 10. So Drupal 11 will have, or Drupal 10.3 itself has an enum, and the use of interface has been deprecated, which means this interface will no longer be available in Drupal 11. So if you are using this in your custom code, it's better to switch to enum now. So this is the enum. It's pretty simple. It is just the case. It does not need a value. So it's rename, replace, or error. And to handle the backwards compatibility, because it is present in Drupal 10.3 now, to handle the backwards compatibility, there is this function. So you said that can enum have a function to initiate? I gave a different answer, like the initiation can happen otherwise in other places, but you can see this enum itself has a function from legacy integer. So going back, the value of constant was an integer here. So this 0 means rename. So what it does is, you can see it adds a match function, and 0 is mapped to the enum's value of rename. So is the error, and the default is replace. So who here remembers finding if a string is part of a string? How difficult it was, right? So combination of functions or regular expressions like string position like strpos, then str. Drupal 8, the PHP 8 finally solves it. So there are functions like string contains, string start with, string ends with. So this is just the bonus. I think that's it from me. Questions? Yes.
Do those string functions support UTF-8, or it's like, anything we should know about that?
I'm sorry?
UTF, like different languages. Sometimes, like back in Drupal's days, you look for something, and sometimes it will match, sometimes it will not, because it would convert the string into like the byte representation, and then it wouldn't match the like if the word is inside or not. Yeah, do they support UTF-8 characters?
Sure. I'll just repeat the question. So does it support UTF-8, these string functions, which means if I am on a different language, would that still work? Because sometimes the other PHP function did not. There is an extra parameter you can pass to this function, and then you can then these functions do support UTF-8.
Thank you.
Sure. Any more questions? Yes.
Yep, I have one question regarding, let's say we were using constants in interface, right? So we could do some sort of similar thing with, let's say, arrays. Like in some of the scripting, we tend to use array as a definition, and then we use that as a reference for building our applications, right? So I am curious to know the performance implication of, let's say, using enums over these traditional things.
Yeah, so the question is, we can use arrays in place of, let's say, an option of enum. where you provide a list of options, predefined options, and use this array elsewhere. And how is that performant or not performant as respect to the enums? So in terms of enums, when you define an enum, its memory allocation is fixed, right? With array, it's flexible. So array is always open to adding more elements. And so in memory, I would say array would be more expensive. Yeah, any more questions? Yes?
With the improvements in PHP, do you think like it will make it easier when you're defining your own plugins? So right now when you're defining your own plugins, you need to remember so many things. I know the generators are there and all that, but do you think it will become easier? Like you showed the annotations became attributes, right? So do you think
Yeah, so the question is, with these new features, would it become easier to define plugins and specifically plugins, block plugin, like let's say, for example? The answer is yes, and I'll tell you the reason. When I started first using PHP annotations, the spacing inside the PHP annotations matter a lot. So basically, if you write a @ block and do not have it at 2 spaces after the asterisk of the comment, it will not read it. And the rest of the things should be aligned as well. So spacing is very important in the PHP doc. And if you make the same mistake in attribute, your IDE will basically give you an error right away. And because the previous PHP annotations were in comments, it was very difficult to even guess, right? Because there was no error in the error log. In that sense, I think it would become it will become more easier for, let's say, anyone new or even someone experienced to work with these new features. Any more questions?
Just adding to what you were saying.
Yeah.
Let's say when we were at Drupal 7, right? We had a completely different way of writing code, and then when we made that switch to Drupal 8, right? Then there was a big question as to, we have to relearn everything that we had to do, right? So I think it's just the next logical step, which PHP itself is optimizing, and then we'll have to just adjust to the new ways of writing, right? So that's what I want to add.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, one question.
Yes.
If I have like Drupal 8 or like PHP 7 or 8 module, is there any possibility like we can migrate the latest version of PHP? Like we have deprecated methods we need to remove, right? So we need to remove every one by one every functions. Or is there any way to like replace by more code?
So is your question, is there an automated way to replace deprecations? In Drupal Core or in Drupal code or in PHP code? So the deprecations in PHP work a little different. It means that all of the code that was working in PHP 8.0 will still work with PHP 8.4. It will just stop working in PHP 9. But we are not yet sure. There is no official statement of when PHP 9 will come out.
So that means we need to migrate or like create a new methods, the deprecated methods, right?
I'm sorry, I did not get that.
So is there any method that deprecated in latest PHP version? We need to create separate methods.
Yes.
For example, is there any MySQL database connections? We have fetch all, fetch column. These two methods are existing in Drupal PHP 8.1, sorry PHP 8.1, but in the latest PHP 8.3, these methods are not exist. So whenever we execute our Drupal application within PHP 8.3, then our site will be go down and the website will counter error. And whenever we enable our error messages, the only single message is showing fetch column with the string method is not available because this method is not exist now. So we need to.
I have to check that actually, because if between minor versions the deprecated code is not removed, but I have to confirm that.
Maybe we can use a combination of PHP stand to identify the the exact code, and then with the help of vector tool, we can replace those things.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Basically, PHP Stan, PHP CS, you can use these in your application, and they would help you scan the code and provide you with these.
They will suggest a simple replacement.
Yes.
Methods. Like for example, I need to use a page column to page associate column.
Yeah.
So it will replace key value pair like this method.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Also, the PHP stand, we can add more rules in there. Like by default, there are very specific set of rules are available,
Yes.
but lots of other rules can be added, which are more specific to different PHP versions as well.
So, but overall my question related to manually efforts. Currently, we need to manually efforts. So, is there any extension of PHP code that we can use to like directly?
I don't know actually. If it is a simple replacement of a function, you can just find and replace.
Thanks.
But that's tricky. You need to test it.
Maybe PHP CDN would provide that, but I don't know.
No.
But I think the main answer would be PHP stand plus vector, like Jaideep mentioned. PHP stand plus vector would be the way to go for that.
Yeah. Okay, I have room for maybe one more question. Time for one more question. If not, then thank you.